Hey guys, it's Danny. Welcome to a new episode from our Myth or Truth series. Today I have more myths or truths to debunk for you guys. All of these myths or truths were left by you guys in the comment section of this particular video or this particular series or other videos on my channel, and I am having so much fun debunking these myths. So if you have something that you'd like to know if it's a myth or truth, let me know down below in a comment and I will get to it at some point. I have a lot of them. I might not get through all of them in a timely fashion, but I will get to them eventually. So let's start. But before we start, this video is of course sponsored by rePotme.com, who offers you everything you could possibly need to properly take care of your orchid, from potting mixes to pots, fertilizers, accessories, and everything in between. And not only for orchids, but also for other houseplants as well, such as cacti and succulents. So I'll link you down below to their website. Feel free to check them out at any time. I will also share with you my personal favorite products that I've been using, some even before I started collaborating with rePotme, and I'm sure you're gonna enjoy them too. And with that said, let us start. I have a lot of good ones today. Let's see how many we managed to go through. First off, a myth or truth sent in by Sutsamadori97. You can keep orchids in a pot of charcoal just like you can keep them in a pot of bark. And that is true. Wow, we're starting off the episode with a truth. I think this is the first episode we do that. Yes, you can actually grow orchids in charcoal, and in some parts of the world, charcoal is the medium of choice. It's not actually bark. It all has to do with what you have naturally available and more reasonably priced. In my region, the only charcoal I can find is the one for barbecues, and I don't like it that much. I'm not sure if that's the one you use, but it's, no, I'm gonna stick with bark. But you can use charcoal. In fact, most of the orchids at the flower shop and that we can grow in our homes are epiphytic, meaning they don't grow in soil. Meaning, yet again, that we have a whole array of so-called potting mixes we can choose from. You can even grow them in Legos if you so desire, but you're gonna have issues with watering because Legos don't really retain water. So I have 3 rules that I always go by when choosing a potting mix or recommending a potting mix. 1, it has to allow for watering. Orchids need to drink water. Their roots need to come in contact with water. And if the medium makes it so that you can deliver water to the roots, then everything is okay. 2nd, it needs to provide adequate aeration, meaning the potting mix should not be very fine or compressed or in any way suffocating to the root system. It needs to allow for adequate airflow, more than in the case of a terrestrial, which grows very well in soil. And 3, it has to be safe and not damaging chemically and physically wise. Chemically, we can think of an unsuitable pH, which can burn roots, or leaching out substances which are not good for the roots. And physically, if it's abrasive or spiky in any way damaging to the roots, not okay. But if a potting mix satisfies these 3 rules, it's good. Other than that, it's just your availability to water. So does Lego satisfy these 3 conditions? Yes, it does. You're gonna have to water very often though. Does charcoal satisfy these conditions? Yes, it does. So you can absolutely grow them in charcoal. Wow, I made this whole allegory with Legos just to prove a point that yes, you can grow them in charcoal. Most of you already know this. Me and talking, we're best buds. Next myth or truth comes from Jennifer Kenny. You cannot grow orchids using only hard water. And they're saying that they did have some issues with some roots dying off, and that can be very, very frustrating. And, well, there isn't an easy answer to this question, but I will say it is partially true. So typically, the harder the water is, the more buildup or residue we can have on the potting mix and on the roots. And at some point, if we have a lot of buildup, that can actually damage especially the root tips. So yes, hard water can actually damage roots. It might not happen after a watering or 2 or 3, but long term it could actually happen, and I've had it happen. In my environment or here in my location, I do have hard water, so what I do is I combine it with reverse osmosis water. I purchased a reverse osmosis system because I know I have hard water, and in time it can lead to problems. Not all orchids will have issues. Some orchids are more robust, Phalaenopsis vandas, Sometimes I cheat a little bit and I just dump in some tap water and it's okay for the main part, but others are not that tolerant. I'm thinking sometimes even oncidiums, they're not tolerating hard water on a regular basis. So depending on the orchids you are growing and depending exactly how hard your water is, you will have more or less issues. You can have no issues at all. But yeah, the harder the water, typically the worse it is for the roots. And if you're having issues and you're suspecting the hard water because you're saying everything else is correct, then yeah, I would consider either trying to purchase distilled water and combining it with the tap water, either investing in a reverse osmosis system, depending how many orchids you have as well. Obviously, if you have 3 orchids, maybe don't buy a reverse osmosis system unless you want to. But if you have 300 plus like me, yeah, reverse osmosis systems are the way to go. Next myth or truth from Maya. Hey, here's a myth or truth question from me. If the eyes of a cattleya type orchid are grazed by pests or dried or damaged in any other way, the orchid won't grow anymore because there's no growing point. Should you stick with this orchid or get rid of it? Wow, that's a great question. So it is actually true. Wow, we didn't have any myths so far. How exciting is today's video? But in order for all of the eyes on a cattleya to completely be damaged, it takes a lot. Each pseudobulb of a cattleya, each mature pseudobulb, has 3-4 eyes, depending on the species. Maybe some have 2. So let's just say they have at least 2 eyes. And presuming you have multiple pseudobulbs on the same orchid, each of those pseudobulbs will have at least 2 eyes. Now, one might be spent with the growth, right? But the other one is still viable. So even if the latest growth has its eyes grazed or damaged, you can have new growth from the back. Now, in the event that all of the available eyes on an orchid, on all of the pseudobulbs are damaged, yes, I don't see how that orchid will survive anymore. Theoretically, if there's no growing point, there will be no growth from the growing point. But do not throw it, because sometimes these orchids have some aces up their sleeves. Have you ever seen a keiki on a cattleya? I have, like in 10 years once. It happened once, but because it happened once from the top of the cane, you know, I would not discard the orchid. Just hang on to it, keep it in, you know, maybe don't give it the best pot or the best potting mix if, you know, you're in a budget, but hang on to it. Maybe you're gonna have a surprise, or maybe there will still be one available eye that you just missed. I love surprises. I never throw away orchids if they're green, unless they're like halfway rotted or anything. But if they're green, hang on to them, because you might have a wonderful surprise. Orchids are full of surprises. But theoretically, and actually logically, if all of the available growing points on an orchid are damaged, then yes, it will not grow anything anymore. Orchids don't really grow keikis or new growths, in the case of the sympodial, from wherever. They have specific structures. You will never see a keiki or a new growth from the very middle of a pseudobulb if it doesn't have that abscission line, if it doesn't have that segment there. But practically, we always miss something with our orchids, so never a good idea to throw something if you're not entirely sure it's gone. Next myth or truth from Nick Moore. Orchid flower color and pattern are influenced by light intensity and temperature. And that is partially true. Wow, again, it is not a myth. Yes, with some orchids, the quantity of light and temperature can actually determine how the flower will look like. And I'll give you just 2 examples off the top of my head. There are others as well. The Nelly Eiler. It will always bloom much better, much redder in lower temperatures. And also the Cattleya Hawaiian Splash Leia, which I've had bloom in 2 different ways. In the cooler season with more yellow, and in the warm season with more purple. Light intensity can affect the, let's say, overall showiness of the flower. The more light you give to an orchid that likes light, like a Cattleya, for example, the better the blooms will be as well. Even with Phalaenopsis is the case. We cannot keep Phalaenopsis like in the dark. If you give it adequate light, you will get the best blooms. If not, you will get some type of blooms. Still pretty, but not full potential. I have a thing with full potential. We need merch, full potential merch. Oh gosh, if you wear that on the street, what will people say? I'm full potential. what? I digress. So yeah, with light intensity, it's not as obvious, but with temperature, definitely some orchids will respond. Some will not. For example, let's say Cherry Baby. The Cherry Baby has never had different looking flowers for me. Light intensity determines fragrance sometimes. So even with the Cherry Baby, if it has adequate light and actually a little bit more on the bright side, if it sits in a bright location, the more intense the fragrance will be as well. So the flower shape and color will not be affected all that much by all of these factors, but the fragrance will be. Now, because I don't know if all orchids are affected by light and temperature and in what capacity, I'm just gonna say partially true. I'm leaning more towards true. I'm sure that these factors do have an effect that maybe I don't perceive or I didn't pay attention to with my orchids. So I'm just gonna say partially true, but definitely. Wow, you have 14 upvotes. People really want to know the answer to this question. Congratulations. Next myth or truth from Wanda. And by the way, thank you so much for being a member for so long. You already have the Nelly Eiler icon. That means over 6 months. So thank you so much. So, myth or truth? You can determine the age of your orchid by the number of leaves that she has. Love this series. Oh, I'm glad you love it. Partially true. Goodness, no myth. I will not stop until I find a myth. Or we are busting so many myths with this series, there are no myths spread in the world. How fantastic is that? So, partially true because, yes, you could say that a Phalaenopsis is at least, let's say, 2 years old by counting the number of leaves, because you know Phalaenopsis orchids create 2 to 3 leaves. But here's where the problem is. Phalaenopsis orchids create 2-3 leaves. Sometimes if they're stressed, 1 or none, or maybe sometimes 4 leaves because it's a seedling. So if you don't know the history of that orchid, it's really hard to say exactly how old it is. You can estimate, you can have an idea about it, but you cannot really know for a fact. It also depends on the environment it grew in. I mean, I have such long summers. My orchids, my Phalaenopsis make even 4 leaves a year. But in other conditions, back in Romania, they were only growing 2 because I had a short growing season. So unless you know all of these details, it's kind of hard to know. Same with the cattleyas. You can say cattleyas are 5 years old because they have 5 pseudobulbs. But you don't know if it's the type of cattleya that produces 1 pseudobulb per year per direction of growth, or it's the type that just grows. So you have to know about that orchid. I'm sure that for some very, very experienced people, expert orchid growers, I'm sure this can apply. As far as I'm concerned, I cannot really guess. I can say, okay, this orchid is about 3-4 years maybe, and I have this intuition more than a fact that I base my suspicion on. But it's not a fact. I cannot tell for sure personally. If you guys know for sure, let me know. But yeah, I wouldn't hazard to say, yes, this one is 10 years old and I know for a fact because it has 10 leaves. It's really hard to know. I don't know the history. What if it was set back at some point? What if old growth was removed? What if it's a division? You know, there are many unknowns here. So it's nice to think about things as tree trunks, right? You count the rings. But orchids are in a continuous state of change, I guess. Depends on their history. So I guess that's more of a myth, although it could be true as well. I'll say partially true. Okay, next up. Oh, all right. This is a good comment. It's a bit of a long one, but let's read through it because I have things to say. So, hi Danny, not sure if this should be a next myth or truth or if you can make an experiment video again, but here it goes. High daytime temperature can inhibit Phalaenopsis flowering time over 29°C, even with the nighttime temperature drop. So I've read some research papers from the Michigan State University, MSU, that showed Phalaenopsis can bloom even with a constant day-night temperature of 20°C. So they didn't need daytime or day-night temperature fluctuation. However, they won't bloom when they were exposed to long periods of high daytime temperature. All right, so A while back, I made a video debunking, before the series was a thing, debunking the idea that some people were spreading at the time that actually what makes orchid or Phalaenopsis rebloom is the difference between daytime and nighttime. So I was debunking that, saying that, hey, considering that I've moved from a temperate climate to a subtropical Mediterranean climate and things are very different, I reached the conclusion that it's actually the value of the temperature, not the difference of temperature. So they're saying that if you keep the daytime very high, over 29°C, which is highly unlikely in autumn, winter, right? If you keep it too high, they won't bloom, even if you put down the temperature in the nighttime. My experience is that even though, yes, the temperature difference absolutely does not matter, has no logic to matter, and I exposed everything in that video. Check it down below. It's an older video, but it's a good one. Maybe I should redo it. So what I was saying is that with my anecdotal experiment, I do believe that it's the value of the temperature. So I usually say 18 degrees Celsius. Some orchids take a little more incentive. 20 degrees can work for many, but 18 can work, 17, 18 can work for everything, pretty much. I know there are those lazy Phalaenopsis that need a bit of a more cool down than others. Now, I used to say that it's especially important in the nighttime because in my experience, I've always had lower temperatures at night than in the daytime. I could never have 20 degrees or 17 degrees all the time. It's impossible. I cannot conduct such an experiment. So even if the research shows that you can keep a temperature constant and you still get flower spikes, that's great, but it's unrealistic for us home growers. The sun comes out, we're in our home, we're not using the AC all the time because power bills. In the nighttime, it's always gonna be lower than in the daytime. But it's not the differential that matters, it's the value you go to. Now, I've never had a nighttime of 17 degrees Celsius and a daytime of 29. Never. But I did have 17 at night, 25 max in the day, and that worked as well. So in my experience, I can tell you that even with that difference, it will still work out. But if you go to 29°C in the daytime, I don't know. Apparently the MSU says that over 29°C means vegetative growth, no flower spikes, no matter if you go down with the temperature in the nighttime. And I can see that. I can see that. Phalaenopsis are warm growers. So in the end, is it myth or truth? I didn't even answer. Yes, what the MSU says here, I trust that it's correct. I trust their research. I'm not going to go against it. My personal experience is along these lines, and I'm so happy I got validated because back in the day when I did that video, there were some voices that were saying, no, it's the differential, the temperature difference. It's when the sunshine sparks on them. I don't know what I'm saying, but yeah, there were voices that were like, no. There you go, research. So there you go. It is true, whatever Michigan State University say. I'm not gonna go against it. So in the end, you guys, with the temperature drop, if you can drop your temperature to 20°C all the time, great. Is it realistic? Not really for home growers, I'm pretty sure. So drop it to 17 at night. It's fine if it goes to 24, 25 in the daytime. My experience says so I'm comfortable telling you that. So there we go. Thank you for letting me know about this research. And by the way, if you can link to the research in a comment, I would love to read it. Thank you so much for sending me this comment. My birds have laughed all of this time. I'm not sure how many times, but they did, didn't they? Sorry, they're happy. Alrighty, that is the last one for today. Oh my gosh, you guys, we didn't have any myths. That's encouraging. That's good. Now, if you didn't hear an answer to your myth or truth, do not worry. I have them here on my computer. I have them in a list. I am not deleting them. I'm going to be answering them in my next videos. So be sure you're subscribed and keep those myth or truths coming. So with that said, thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed today's video. Thank you, rePotme, for sponsoring another video of this series. And with that said, I'll see you all next time. Bye.